JPC with Tzipi Yarom, an ultra-Orthodox activist. Tzipi is a mother of 4. We just saw Esther, her youngest one, before we started, and maybe we'll see her or hear her during the webinar, so bear with us. Everybody now are involved. Tzipi is a software engineer who's an activist in DOSIM, an organization trying to change the negative representation of the ultra-Orthodox in the media. So today, Tzipi, you must have more work to do than ever. I want to thank my colleagues at JPC for facilitating this webinar. Tzipi will start with a short introduction and then we'll open up for Q&A. You are on mute, so please type your questions on chat and Tzipi will answer them at the best of her ability. Let me start, Tzipi, by saying that if you look at today's papers, really the situation is, at least as an image of the ultra-Orthodox community in the media, is not so good. I mean, I'm just showing the Yediot Achronot of today, Tuesday, March 31st. The Minister of Health, Litzman, says situation in Bnei Brak is terrible. We must close the whole city. Yesterday, I heard the mayor of the neighboring city, Ramat Gan, calling to impose a full curfew on Bnei Brak because there's a spillover of corona from Bnei Brak to Ramat Gan. And if this is not enough, then in the Haaretz today, again, Tuesday, March 31st, the headline is Israel is being pushed to a full curfew because of the ultra-Orthodox, because of the Haredi. So what is your take on this recent development?
As always, the short answer is that it's complicated. But first and foremost, the media found the usual scapegoat, the Haredi sector. And the irony that Litzman is calling for full quarantine on Bnei Brak is that Litzman didn't do enough, to say the least, it's an understatement, to address the problem to the Haredi community. Everybody dealing with marketing knows that you have to address each crowd in its own tools. Prime Minister Netanyahu stood in front of us, the citizens of Israel, several times. It took them a few weeks to understand, for example, that they need a sign language translator there, and they still didn't apply our Arabic subtitles for the 25% Arabic speakers in Israel. So we see that there is a severe problem of addressing specific sectors in the Israeli society. And the Haredi society got very, very little information, official information from the Ministry of Health.
Why is that? Because they
we're
don't
all
watch
asking
television.
that. I'll tell you more than that. Trying to criticize him in my newspaper just didn't work. I came back from the US through Italy when it was still allowed. And then a few days later, they said, if you came through Italy, even though it was just a layover, you have to go into quarantine. And I wrote about it for the paper, and I described the chaos that was going on in the airport. And just the fact that I wrote something that is criticizing the Minister of Health in the middle of a crisis, they said, no, it can't go on. And I'm not, and by they, I don't talk about my editors. I talk about the rabbinical board of the newspaper. They said, you just can't do that now. So they told me either you change it or we just can't print it. So it's an absurd that it happened, but this is how it goes. And it really is a problem, because the real way, everybody knows, if you want something from the Haredi society, go to the rabbis. He had to gather prominent rabbis, address them with facts, and make sure that they would deliver it to their communities. We all saw that once we had letters from rabbis, numbers of people on the streets dropped dramatically. So there will always be some rebellious people, or some, might I say, some stupid people, or at least uninformed, severely uninformed. But once the rabbis had the data, because somebody who was responsible enough decided, I'll go there, I'll talk to the rabbi, and he would issue the letter, like a known doctor from Bnei Brak who finally did it last week, then things started to work as it should in our very severe crisis. But beforehand, Litzman is the first one to be blamed for what was going on in Bnei Brak. So the fact he didn't sit with one single rabbi, aside for his own rabbi, the Ger Rebbe, who should be commended for the fact that he canceled all the events on Purim, which was more than 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and then he issued orders for people to stay home, and this is what they did. All the rest of the rabbis just didn't hear from him or his people personally. So again, there are initiatives by good doctors, I should say, people who care about the community. For example, a doctor from the Tel Aviv University who reached Rabbi Zilberstein in Bnei Brak. Rabbi Zilberstein is the brother-in-law of the known Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, and he is a prominent rabbi of himself. He's the rabbi of the neighborhood of Ramat El Hanan in Bnei Brak. And he right away just took the letter of this professor who reached out to him and added his own orders on top of this letter, and he copied it, and people that he sent these copies just hanged those letters in each and every building in his neighborhood. So in his neighborhood, everybody got the needed information and some more orders on top of it. Just a second, I'm sorry.
This is Esther. Tzipi, there's a question. Who sent the letter?
I have to check. I don't remember by heart, but if you wait for a second, you'll get a full answer. Just a second.
Maybe Esther knows.
I just have the letter on my phone, so just a second.
So if you send it to us, we'll disseminate it among the people, okay?
Okay, I would, no problem.
Okay.
So I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please do. Anyway, but Tzipi, one of the problem is that we non-Orthodox Jews look at the Haredi as one entity, you know, the Haredim, the Ultra-Orthodox, and there's all those sects among them, and some of them are more radical than others. For example, the Lithuanians and the Jerusalem section, so they each pull to their own thing, and while we see some improvement in Bnei Brak and also in Jerusalem, there's still those conflict with the police, and people seem to defy the interference of the government in whatever they're doing.
That was a very good definition of what is going on. People who are not wise enough to separate the fact that they don't like the state or oppose the state from the fact that from the fact that they want to be healthy and stay healthy and protect their families. So they are looking at everything as something that the state is against them. But they are I would say, a minority, a very visible one, but a minority. Just a second, I'm going to take her away from here.
No problem. She'll be back, don't worry. Tzipi, by the way, is one of our guides with the Haredi community, and whenever journalism students come to us, we take them to Mea Shearim with the guidance of Tzipi, and they all mention that this is one of the highlights of their trip in Israel. So we're happy to host her and Esther as well. The question is,
Yes.
even if Haredi comply with the order to stay at home, there's a big family there. Somebody goes out, comes back, infected, immediately the whole family is infected. How do you manage at home with such big families?
I would say you just don't. Meaning, if somebody, as you said, if somebody is infected, then the entire family is likely to be infected. This is the reality. What could you do? By the time they checked you and you got a positive answer, that's too late. Everybody is infected or not. If they're not infected, they wouldn't get infected at all because probably their genetics is likely not to get it. My brother just got this morning a positive answer. Now, he didn't feel sick. A week ago, his brother-in-law was diagnosed, was tested positive for corona, and his situation wasn't good. They hospitalized him, and very fast it deteriorated. So he was in the ICU for several days. They didn't know what is going on with him. He is just in his 30s. Baruch Hashem, he's out of ICU now. But anyway, my brother started thinking about it. When he was diagnosed, it was 15 days after my brother saw him the last time, and not for a long time. They met each other for a few minutes, but I guess maybe they shook hands or something. Maybe they hugged each other or something. So my brother started thinking. He said, well, last week, I had some headaches. And I had some, he had a little bit of a cough, not something hard, something that he would think it's just an easy cold, mild cold. So he called Magen David Adom, and they referred him to his Kupat Cholim, and they said, since you were in close contact with a positive patient, we would test you. They tested him, and it took 6 days from the beginning of the process, because 4 days until they came to him, and then 2 more days. And he's feeling all well. He's positive, but his symptoms are not there. So first of all, we have to know that there are a lot of people like that. But the second thing is that he has his wife and 6 children. Of course, they were all with him. The assumption is that they are all infected as well. They won't even be tested. So once anybody in the family is sick, you assume that all the rest got it. They don't even test it, which tells you that we don't even know the real number. His wife has cold symptoms. They're not going to check her as well. What do? You get infected. That's it. Most of us wouldn't get anything. They stay in quarantine. So at least from now on, they wouldn't infect other people. And they just wait for it to go away.
Tzipi, one of the characteristics of the Haredi community is the group culture. Everything it's done together, praying, celebrating, etc. So I assume it's very difficult to change that. But what's going to happen in Pesach, in the Seder?
Most people would stay home. I'll tell you more than that. Most people just want to comply with the orders. The question is, did they get the orders on time? Did they understand the orders on time? For example, I spoke to people who told me, it's just like a flu, who cares? Flu also kills people. They didn't even get this, what is for all of us here is simple information. This is not a flu. And I wrote about it 2 months ago. 2 months. I'm a science correspondent in Mishpacha magazine. I just, and you don't need to be a genius to understand when you are in sciences, you don't need to be a genius to understand the data. And the data show that we are all going to get this disease, and too many people are going to be infected. I wrote it back then. Again, I'm no prophet or something. It's just pure science. So people didn't get it. And even now, some people, and I have to say they're really a small minority, are arguing with me that you couldn't know that 2 months ago. I know of a rabbi who warned people not to shake hands and so on several weeks ago, before, for example, Netanyahu said it, or in other places, and some people just laughed at him. They thought he was exaggerating. So once people started understanding what was going on, they started to keep themselves at home. I'll tell you more than that. My sister, I have one sister who is part of what we call Perek Yerushalmi, the rebellious part of the Lithuanian community. And her husband wouldn't even care enough. But she kept all of her 9 children at home. She wouldn't even let them go outside. You know, we all take our children next to our building. We all do that. And I don't live nowadays in a Haredi neighborhood. I see everybody outside with the children. You just take them outside next to your building because they need to breathe some air. You don't do more than that, and it's okay by the orders. You're allowed to do that. She says, no, I'm afraid they would catch something outside. She bought new games for them, and she doesn't have a lot of money, and she needs the money when it's Erev Pesach. But she said, I want them to be contained at home. She stays home. Most of the people I hear about, this is what they do. The others either didn't get enough information, or they just have a rebellious character. What could I say? And they are a problem. We see them as a problem because they are a danger for all of us. Meaning, supposedly, if I'll get infected, or maybe I did already, I don't know, nothing would happen to me. But if I'll get close to my grandparents, which I didn't do for a long time because of the disease, and way before it was the official orders, I might put them in danger. So those people are putting others in danger. I find it that most of them, once you explain them the real characteristics of the disease, they understand and they stay home. And mostly, in most places, once they had the letter from Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, they all stay home. They don't pray outside. They stay at home alone, pray inside their homes. They wouldn't go outside, and they would do a small Pesach, which is very sad. But this is what they would do in the Seder night.
Tzipi, you talked about rebellious women. You yourself, I would say, have some kind of rebellious character. Do you think women can make a change in the way the Haredi community responds to the crisis?
Sorry, that's I'm sorry.
No problem. Esther is rebellious, seems like. Tzipi told us in the past that she attracted a lot of criticism for her vocal opposition, and I just can tell you, once in a tour, she guided us in Mea Shearim, and some kids started to point at the girls who were in the tour, and she kicked them very vocally. So we're talking about the role of women.
I don't think it's just women now. I really think it's everybody. First of all, women did stay home more than men, naturally, because men would go outside for prayers and women would not. Girls' schools stopped immediately when there was an order about it. while boys' schools fighted it. They asked for, studying in groups of 10 and things like that. They took the empty girls' schools and studied there. No things like that were done by the girls. But as I see it, everybody is fighting those rebellious part of the society who endanger us all. Nobody is standing for them. Nobody who has some senses, I would say, is standing for them. Neither men or women. Now,
there is an issue raised today by Nivcharot. It's a group of Haredi women who push to be represented in politics, and they raise the issue which they bring to one of the Knesset committees today about violence, domestic violence in the Haredi community, which increases.
It was raised beforehand. It was raised beforehand by other women who deal with domestic violence. They say that the statistics show that domestic violence tend to go up in times of stress, and this is the time of an immense stress. So it's a problem for everybody suffering from domestic violence.
So it's not something typical to the Haredi, because we had cases before when those things were not reported and people were trying to keep it within the family or within the community and not let the authorities interfere in the investigation or law enforcement.
Not happening so much anymore. As much as I know, usually it would be the rabbis. I know some cases that the rabbis were those who referred to police and welfare authorities to get help. In other places, I don't think the curfew would do a change, meaning they are violent anyway. They would just continue to suffer, unfortunately.
There's a question you mentioned before, the rebellion or the action against the radicals who wouldn't comply with the regulation. Can you elaborate on this? I mean, what do you do? How do you counter these people? For example, if we see on television people defying the orders and going close to each other, like we saw in Bnei Brak, or clashing with the police, how do you counter them?
So first of all, the rabbi said, it's a few weeks ago already, that if anybody is violating the orders, you could report to the police. People wouldn't do that easily, but once they were told they could, people do. So there are much more calls for police help in Bnei Brak, for example, and people wouldn't hesitate to call the police. Question is the police doing its work? Sometimes the answer is very much yes, and then we see them coming, finding people, making sure they wouldn't be in groups and so on. But I have some testimony from Modi'in Illit of a man who is standing again and again. He's pleading the local cop to just send people outside to explain. I'm not talking about today, it's from the 15th. Pleading for help, so they would come there and explain to the people outside in the local park that it's dangerous and you shouldn't send your children there. It's just too many people in one place. It's not good for the health of your children and you and your parents and grandparents. He just got no response. He tried the next day and the next day and the next day, and it didn't work. Yesterday, there was something that violated the orders in the very same place. I told him, call police. He said, I'm just tired from calling them. They're not coming. So it's also about how much the authorities are responsive to calls. But in general, I'll tell you, for example, in one side, my grandparents, my grandfather felt like he's 83 years old. He felt like it would like really break him if he wouldn't go to a prayer in a quorum of 10. The synagogue he prays in took nice measures to make sure people would be distant from each other. I'm talking about the time it was still allowed. They would be distant from each other. They put benches on the tables in a way that would divide the shul, so people just couldn't touch each other and get in touch with each other. And on top of this, my grandfather would just stand next to the window for the time of the prayer. I said, it's too dangerous. Don't go there. Even if you do that, you're above 80. It's very dangerous for you. But he felt like he's gonna break him, and he would go. I didn't know what to do. And then there was the order that you have to close the synagogues. So I told my mother, just please find out if it's closed, because this is our solution finally. And if it's not closed, then I'm going to report to the police that it's not closed, and they would come and close it. But they did close. So people like me and many people like this, I'm telling you, it happened in the neighborhood several times in the last few days, and it helped. Because once people know that they would get a fine, nobody wants to get a fine of 5,000 shekels. If nothing else is working, this would work. So it again goes back to the root of the problem, that we didn't have rabbi's orders. Once we have it, and it's so and so, don't be outside, and you could report to police, so almost everybody is complying. So even those who are not would be reported by others.
How can people without, there's a question, how can people without mobile or television sets hear about it? Is pashkvils, posters, or cars with loudspeakers, these kind of things?
Okay, so let's go to the basic newspapers. Daily newspapers did write about it, not enough. Also, they sent, maybe still send, double messages, meaning we do what we have to do to stay healthy, but also some vague messages about yeshiva staying open and so on. They didn't do their job enough. Now, they did in several places send out cars with loudspeakers warning people. And somebody even sent me one of them in Yiddish, meaning they try to talk to people in Yiddish. It wasn't done by the Ministry of Health. It was done by Ichud Hatzalah or Zaka, private organizations. As someone in Bnei Brak said, yes, we did have loudspeakers, but there are so many of them every day that I'm sure many people just didn't listen, because they just got used to not listen. Now, they did put some messages on the walls. I never saw them, but somebody sent me a picture that he took on the 13th this month, and he took it in Geula, and was a message from the Ministry of Health that you should be careful. That's the only official message I saw from them in the Haredi streets. Now they have much more. A few days ago, by the end of last week, they started. They printed some sort of a booklet explaining what you have to do, and I think even in Yiddish, and they started putting it in the post boxes of people, so they would finally see and read it. I didn't see it. I just saw pictures of it, and people who read it said it still lacks of information. Like when you watch TV, you always see graphical information. There wasn't enough of that in those booklets, but I can still say they tried. That's a beginning. Other than that, it's people like me who are writing articles, hoping that people would read them and understand what is going on, and would figure for themselves they have to be careful.
Okay, last question. You started by mentioning the Arab community, which is 20% of Israeli population. They also had some problems of compliance, but it seems that they are moving along. But they have something which worked for them, at least in a public image, and that's the large number of Arab doctors and nurses, etc., medical staff, etc. So there's it seems to be a change of attitudes toward the Arabs, while with the Haredi community, there are already allegations like they're going to take the ventilators we need. They don't contribute to the community anyway, and now we're going to pay for their insistence on keeping their own particular way of life. How do you counter that?
First of all, there are thousands of medics who are Haredi. I would argue thousands of Haredi nurses. Just a second. כן, ספרי, מה אפשר לעזור? נו, איפה שמת אותו? הנה, הוא קחי אותו. I'm sorry. My mother is a nurse. I can send you a picture of her. She's
Please
really
do.
in the front line.
Please do.
And she's an ER. She's an ER pediatrics ER nurse. It's dangerous, but this is a job you should do, and this is what she's doing. And it's actually Haredi doctors who partly got the better results in the community because like the letter that I mentioned before from Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky was before influenced by a letter from Rabbi Gerson Edelstein, who is a Rosh Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, and he was influenced in turn by a Haredi doctor, who just came to him and actually wrote part of his letter. So we have people from within the community who are doing the job. I mentioned the loudspeakers before, coming from Hatzalah and Zaka. There is a campaign of how should I call them, ads. It's online ads of people. It's online ads. They were made by Ichud Hatzalah and by Zaka that we all share. Everybody who has some access to internet, we share it. And the hope is that it would get to as many people as could be. Why? Because although the WhatsApp is still the minority of people who use it, many people have access to email. They have only email at home. They can't reach anything else, but by email they get the information. That said, I have to say that some news are being spread through those emails, and this is the reason why some people didn't comply soon enough, because they were getting the fake news, which prevented them from listening to what they had to listen.
Okay, Tzipi, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us and enlightening us about what's going on in the Haredi community. I wish you and your family good health, be safe, and happy Pesach, and thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned to our next webinar. We'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you.